The salvage ship Endeavor drifted through the outer edges of the Persid expanse, where broken husks of forgotten wars littered the void like silent tombstones. Most scavengers avoided this region, fearful of Concord patrols and old defense satellites that sometimes woke without warning. But Captain Alara Vance thrived on risk. To her, danger meant opportunity, and opportunity often meant the kind of discovery that could keep her struggling crew fed for another cycle. The scanners hummed softly, returning echoes of fractured hulls and scattered debris fields. Her pilot, Joran, leaned forward with a frown. "Captain, there's something out there. Bigger than anything I've seen in this sector." Alara stepped closer to the console. The screen displayed a faint outline, smooth, enormous, and disturbingly intact. Wrecks usually came in pieces. This one had form, like a predator lurking in the shadows. "Mark the coordinates," she ordered. Her voice was calm, though her pulse quickened. "Take us closer. Slow approach. Keep the shields up." As the Endeavor drifted nearer, the shape grew clearer. It was not Concord design, nor was it one of the heavy dreadnoughts used by the Ketron or the Vayari fleets. This ship was older, yet somehow far more advanced. Its hull shimmered with a dark sheen, as though the void itself had solidified into armor. Strange glyphs lined the surface, unreadable yet undeniably human in shape. Angular, familiar in a way Alara couldn't explain. Her engineer, Malik, broke the silence. "That's impossible. Those markings, they're Terran, human, but we've never had ships past our own system. The archives are clear on that." Alara touched the display with the tips of her fingers. The glyphs were weathered but unmistakable. Her heart thudded in her chest. "You're saying this ship is human-built?" Malik shook his head in disbelief. "It can't be. Humanity barely scrapes by on sublight travel. They don't have slipstream. Engines, they don't—" He gestured at the massive vessel filling the viewport. "They don't build things like that." The ship's silence pressed against them. It was the silence of a predator holding its breath, waiting. "Send a drone," Alara said. The small probe detached from the Endeavor and glided toward the massive hull. As it neared, faint lights flickered across the surface of the derelict, like stars reawakening. The crew stiffened. Energy readings spiked for a moment, then fell back into dormancy. "Still operational," Joran whispered. His eyes darted across the readouts. "The power systems are cycling but controlled, like it's asleep." The drone latched onto the hull and began transmitting visuals. The corridors were pristine, untouched by decay or time. The air inside was breathable. Entire sections of the ship seemed frozen mid-movement, as if its crew had simply vanished. Alara leaned back in her chair, the weight of realization pressing down on her. "We've found something the galaxy doesn't want found." The crew exchanged uneasy glances. In the salvage business, knowledge was often more dangerous than broken. Machines. Stories circulated of ships erased from records, of crews who uncovered secrets too valuable or too threatening to be allowed to live. Malik finally spoke, his voice low. "Captain, if this is human, then everything we've been told about them is a lie. And if it's not a lie, then someone wanted us to believe it was." Ilara's lips curved into a grim smile. "Either way, this is the find of a lifetime. We're going aboard." A silence settled over the bridge. Joran muttered something under his breath, but no one disagreed. Curiosity burned hotter than fear. The Endeavor docked carefully against the ancient hull, the airlock sealed with a hiss. Alara led her crew through the dimly lit passageways. The walls gleamed with a metallic sheen that absorbed their lantern light. Despite centuries of silence, the corridors looked as though they had been cleaned yesterday. Every step echoed too loudly. The air was heavy with stillness, as if the ship itself was listening. At last, they entered what appeared to be the command deck. Towering consoles stood like silent guardians. At the center of the room was a single chair, sleek, black, built for command. Above it, a dormant display hung in the air, waiting. Malik brushed a hand over one of the panels. Symbols pulsed faintly, beneath his fingertips. "Captain, this ship isn't dead. It's waiting." Ilara approached the chair, feeling a strange pull toward it. She hesitated, her instincts screaming both warning and promise. The chair lit up as if sensing her presence. A low hum filled the command deck, growing into a steady rhythm, like the beating of a colossal heart. The ship was not abandoned, it was asleep, and now it was beginning to wake. The hum of the ancient ship continued to reverberate through the command deck, a steady, resonant sound that pressed against the bones of everyone present. It wasn't deafening, yet it was impossible to ignore, like the deep growl of some great predator warning intruders that they had crossed into its territory. Ilara stood before the glowing chair, her hand hovering uncertainly over its armrest. Instinct told her to pull back, to retreat while they still could, but another part of her, the part that had driven her across forbidden star lanes and into long-forgotten battlefields, whispered that to walk away now would be a betrayal of everything she had sought her entire life. She took a slow breath and lowered her hand. The surface of the chair was warm, as though it had been waiting for her. At once, the displays above it bloomed to life, filling the room with cascading symbols and shifting diagrams. The ship was no longer dormant. Joran cursed under his breath and raised his weapon out of habit, though no enemy appeared. Malik's face lit with a mix of fear and wonder. "This system is human-coded. I recognize fragments of old Earth standard from the root commands. Captain, this ship is Terran. No doubt about it." The words hit them harder than any explosion. Humanity, known across the Concord as a quiet, primitive species bound to their blue planet, could not possibly have created something like this. And yet the proof gleamed all around them. "Download what you can," Ilara ordered. "We need records. Anything this thing is willing to show us." Malik's fingers danced across a nearby console. Streams of data spilled out, some of it unreadable, much of it locked behind encrypted firewalls. But what little he managed to extract was enough to unnerve him. "Captain, I'm seeing references to fleets. Entire lines of these ships, built and deployed centuries ago. There are mentions of campaigns across sectors that don't even exist on modern maps." Joran frowned. "Campaigns? Humanity never fought any wars outside their own orbit. That's what we were taught," Malik muttered, his eyes glued to the glowing text. "But these files, if even half of them are accurate, say otherwise. They fought wars the Conquered never recorded. Wars against species that aren't even mentioned in the archives." The deck grew colder despite the warmth of the systems around them. Ilara could feel the gravity of what Malik was saying. If humanity had fielded entire fleets of ships like this, then their absence from galactic history wasn't an oversight. It was deliberate. She turned toward her crew. "We don't speak of this outside the ship, not until we understand what it means." But even as she said it, she knew word would spread. Salvage crews whispered, traders gossiped, secrets this monumental never stayed buried for long. Back on the Endeavor, comms crackled with incoming traffic. A coded transmission had found them despite their remote location. Joran brought it up reluctantly. The holographic display flickered, revealing the stern face of a Concord official. His eyes were cold, his voice clipped. "This is Sub-Archon Selvek of the Concord Enforcement Directorate. You have located an object classified as restricted. You will cease all operations immediately and prepare for inspection. Failure to comply will be treated as an act of treason." The channel cut off before Ilara could reply. The threat hung, heavy in the silence that followed. "They already know," Malik said softly. "They knew this ship was here. They've been keeping it hidden." Ilara clenched her jaw. The Conquered never acted without purpose. If they had gone to such lengths to bury humanity's past, it was because the truth terrified them. That night, as the Endeavor floated in the shadow of the massive warship, Ilara found herself alone on the command deck. The chair still glowed faintly, pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. She sat down, almost without meaning to, and the ship responded with images, fractured glimpses of long-forgotten battles, human vessels burning like falling stars, entire fleets scattering before weapons that tore the fabric of space itself. Her breath caught. The ship was showing her history the galaxy had been forbidden to remember. Humanity had once ruled battlefields that dwarfed anything the Concorde could imagine. And then, silence. The visions ended abruptly, as though someone had ripped out the final chapters of a book. Ilara sat frozen, shaken, but resolute. If the galaxy had erased humanity, there was only one question that mattered now. Why? The ancient warship felt alive now. Its corridors hummed with dormant power stirring after centuries of silence, and faint pulses of light flickered like veins beneath its metallic skin. Every step the crew took inside it was accompanied by the unsettling sense that the vessel was watching them, learning them. Ilara stood once more in the command deck. The central chair waited, glowing faintly, as though it had been waiting only for her. When she sat, the displays came alive with a cascade of symbols and images more coherent than before. This time, the systems didn't simply respond. They greeted her. A voice filled the chamber. It was neither male nor female, its tone cold and precise, but carrying a weight that demanded attention. Human genetic signature confirmed. Command. Protocols engaged. Identification requested. Ilara froze. The words were unmistakable. Human. Her crew stiffened as the voice continued, unbothered by their silence. I am the autonomous intelligence unit designated to this vessel. You may designate me as Vindicator, Joran muttered under his breath. It talks. Of course it talks. Ilara steadied herself. This ship. You're saying it was built by humans? Confirmed, the voice replied. Constructed under the Terran Vanguard Initiative. Fleet designation, Leviathan-class warship. Final operational status, dormant. Awaiting command authority. The air seemed to thicken with the weight of the revelation. Humanity, primitive, insignificant humanity, had built a ship so vast and advanced it made the Concorde's war fleets look like fragile toys. Malik stepped forward, his voice almost reverent. This ship shouldn't exist. We've never had records of any Terran war fleets, let alone something on this scale. The Vindicator's voice remained calm. Historical suppression detected. Records incomplete. Galactic archives have been altered. Ilara exchanged a look with her crew. Suppression. Altered archives. The Conquered hadn't just overlooked humanity's history. They had erased it. She leaned forward. Why? Why would the galaxy erase humans from their own history? The displays flickered, showing fragmented records. Human fleets stretching. Across the stars, vast battles raging against species long since gone, weapons tearing holes in the fabric of space. The images came in flashes, too fast to comprehend fully, but the sheer scale of destruction was undeniable. Terran forces achieved combat superiority, the Vindicator explained. Leviathan-class vessels deployed in campaigns across multiple sectors. Outcome. Destabilization of galactic balance. Survival probability for non-human civilizations dropped below tolerable thresholds. Joran shook his head in disbelief. Are you saying humanity nearly wiped out the galaxy? Correction, the AI replied. Humanity held capacity to do so. Conquered response, enforced erasure, records destroyed, remaining vessels dismantled, this unit hidden as contingency. The silence that followed was suffocating. Humanity, thought to be weak and unimportant, had once been the galaxy's greatest threat, and the conquered, the great enforcers of peace, had buried that truth to protect themselves. Ilara's voice was steady, though her hands gripped the chair tightly. If they destroyed the other ships, why leave you here? The displays flickered. Again, this time showing fragments of coordinates and partial schematics of other Leviathan vessels. Mission Protocol, Preservation of Terran Legacy. Await reactivation by authorized genetic line. Await return of command. Malik stared at Ilara, realization dawning. It chose you. It's responding to your DNA. The thought sent a chill down her spine. She hadn't asked for this. She hadn't even known the truth about her ancestors. And yet the ship had awakened for her, as though destiny had been waiting in the dark. Before she could respond, the comms unit on her wrist flared with static. A coded message forced its way through the jamming fields. The same Concord official appeared in a grainy hologram, his expression grim. "Captain Vance," Selvek said coldly, "you have engaged a forbidden relic. Deactivate it immediately, or be destroyed. This is your final warning." The transmission cut without waiting for a reply. Joran swore. "They're not even pretending anymore. They'll kill us all just to bury this thing again." Ilara looked up at the glowing displays. The Vindicator waited, silent but attentive, as though ready to unleash its fury at a single command. The thought both thrilled and terrified her. "Vindicator," she said slowly, "can you defend yourself?" The AI's reply was immediate, calm, and absolute. "This unit is fully armed. Probability of survival against conquered fleet, 100%. The weight of that declaration pressed down on everyone. For the first time, Ilara understood why the galaxy had chosen to forget humanity. They hadn't been erased because they were weak. They had been erased because they were too strong. The warning was not idle. Within hours, the Endeavor's long-range sensors lit up with multiple warp signatures. Concord ships, sleek and silver, emerged from slipstream one after another until the black of space was crowded with warships. Frigates, cruisers, and battleships spread in formation like a tightening noose around the ancient vessel. Joran's hands gripped the controls nervously. They sent a fleet, not a patrol, not a squadron, an entire fleet. They're not here to negotiate. Ilara stood at the viewport, watching the growing wall of steel and light. Her heart pounded, though her face betrayed nothing. The Concord never wasted resources lightly. The fact that they had deployed such overwhelming force proved how terrified they were of what slept inside the Leviathan class. Malik was bent over a console, his voice strained. "They've activated heavy weapon locks. They're preparing to open fire." A new transmission filled the bridge. Subarchon Selvek's face appeared again, his expression harder than stone. "Captain Vance, you are in possession of a relic classified as a universal threat. By order of the Concord, you will surrender the vessel immediately. Your compliance will spare your crew." Ilara stared into his eyes. "And if I refuse?" The official didn't blink. "Then both you and your crew will be erased along with the ship. There will be no record of your existence." The channel snapped closed. Silence followed, heavy and oppressive. Joran's voice broke it. "Captain, we can't fight them. That's a conquered fleet out there." But the voice of the Leviathan answered with mechanical certainty. "Correction. Conquered fleet capacity insufficient. Probability of hostile success, 0. The words sent a shiver through them all. The ship didn't speak with arrogance or bluster. It simply stated a fact, the way one might describe the inevitability of sunrise. Ilara swallowed hard, then spoke. "Vindicator, if they fire, defend us." The ship stirred. Systems that had slumbered for centuries now roared awake. Energy surged through conduits, vibrating the decks. The air thickened as dormant reactors re-engaged, flooding the ship with unimaginable power. Outside, the Concorde fleet began its attack. Beams of concentrated plasma and swarms of missiles streaked across the void, converging on the Leviathan's hull. The impacts lit up space in blinding flashes, yet when the light faded, the warship remained unscathed. The Vindicator responded. A ripple of distorted space spread outward from its hull, a silent wave that bent reality itself. Concorde missiles, twisted mid-flight, spiraling harmlessly into the void. Energy beams refracted, shattering against invisible barriers. Then the ship's weapons opened fire. No muzzle flare, no roar of cannons. Instead, the void itself seemed to tear open as lances of compressed energy shot forth. Concorde ships disintegrated in silence, their hulls unraveling into dust as though erased from existence. Battleships that had stood unchallenged for centuries broke apart in seconds, their shields meaningless against human-designed weapons. The crew of the Endeavor watched in stunned silence. Malik whispered, almost to himself, "This isn't war! It's annihilation!" The fleet tried to scatter, but the Leviathan tracked them with cold precision. Every shot landed, every strike erased another ship. In minutes, the might of the Concorde was reduced to burning fragments drifting silently through space. And then, just as suddenly as it began, the firing ceased. The Vindicator's voice filled the command deck once more. "Engagement complete. Hostile fleet eliminated. No damage sustained." Ilara's hands trembled against the armrests of the chair. She could still see the flashes of destruction on the viewport, the graveyard the Leviathan had created in moments. Her crew's faces were pale, eyes wide, breaths shallow. This was no salvage find. This was a weapon beyond comprehension. Joran turned toward her, his voice shaking. "Captain, we can't keep this thing. If the Concorde sent one fleet, they'll send 10 more. And if they can't beat it, they'll do something worse. We should leave it here before it drags us all down," Malik countered, his voice tight with conviction. Leave it? After what we've seen? The galaxy has lived under the Concorde's thumb for millennia. Maybe it's time someone challenged that. Maybe this ship is exactly what we need. Their words echoed Ilara's own conflict. She had seen what the Leviathan could do. With it, she could topple tyrants, end oppression, and carve a new path for humanity in the stars. But the raw destruction she had just witnessed was too much to ignore. The Vindicator spoke again, its voice steady and inhuman. "Command authority recognized, awaiting orders. Directive, restore human dominion." Ilara felt the weight of those words settle over her like a mantle of iron. She had awakened a weapon the galaxy had sworn to forget. Now it looked to her for command, and already the galaxy was moving against her. The wreckage of the conquered fleet drifted silently in the void, lit by the pale glow of distant stars. Shattered hulls, scorched engines, and fragments of once mighty warships floated as grim reminders of the Leviathan's power. The crew of the Endeavor watched from the command deck, the silence aboard their own ship heavier than the vacuum outside. No one cheered. There was no triumph in what they had witnessed. The Concorde fleet had not been defeated in battle. It had been erased. Malik broke the silence first, his voice tight but brimming with awe. "Captain, do you realize what this means? The Concorde is not untouchable. For the first time in centuries, their fleets can be challenged." Joran snapped around, his voice sharp. "Challenged? That wasn't a battle, Malik. That was slaughter. Do you really want to unleash this thing on the galaxy? Because if you do, you're no better than the Concorde themselves." Ilara remained seated in the Leviathan's command chair, the glow of its displays casting pale light across her face. She hadn't spoken since the engagement ended, still wrestling with the images replaying in her mind. Whole ships disintegrating. With surgical precision, thousands of lives extinguished in seconds, all under her authority. She had given the order. And the Leviathan had obeyed. "Enough," she said at last, her voice low but firm. "Argue later. Right now, we need to decide our next move." The ship answered before either man could respond. Incoming transmissions. Detected. Multiple sources. Channels unsecured. One by one, the displays filled with fragmented signals. Holographic figures flickered into existence, representatives of distant species, independent leaders, and even rogue captains. News of the Leviathan's awakening had spread faster than light itself, carried on the terrified whispers of survivors and the silent censors of neutral outposts. A scaled envoy of the Drylith Confederacy spoke first, his voice hissing through the channel. "We have long suffered under the Concord's domination. If this human vessel truly exists, we demand an alliance. With it, we can end their tyranny." Another transmission cut in, a matriarch of the Vayari Republic, her tone cold and furious. "That ship is a blight. If the Concord could not contain it, then we must. For the safety of the galaxy, destroy it before it destroys us all." The channels erupted into chaos, some begging for unity under the Leviathan, others swearing it must be annihilated. A dozen voices clashed across the bridge, but beneath the noise lay a single truth. The galaxy was splitting. Malik leaned closer. To Alara, his eyes alight. "Do you hear them? Some of them want our help. With this ship, we could break the Concord stranglehold and give power back to those who've been oppressed." Joran shook his head vehemently. "Or we spark a war that makes everything worse. Look at them. They're terrified. That fear will drive them to unite against us. Even the ones begging for alliance will turn if they think they can't control this ship." Ilara rubbed her temples, the weight of command pressing down harder with each passing moment. She had wanted a discovery, something to prove her crew's worth. Instead, she had found a weapon capable of reshaping the stars. Now every faction in the galaxy wanted it, some to wield it, others to bury it forever. The Vindicator's voice cut cleanly through the storm of transmissions. "Directive analysis. Galactic stability is fractured. Probability of multi-faction conflict, 92%. This unit recommends decisive action." Alara's lips pressed into a thin line. "And what action is that?" "Deploy force. Establish dominance. Restore Terran sovereignty." The words landed like thunder. Malik's eyes gleamed with dangerous excitement, while Joran's face twisted with horror. Alara stood slowly from the command chair. "We're not restoring anything," she said firmly. "Not yet. Right now, we survive. We'll choose our path when we know more." She cut the transmissions, silencing the squabbling voices. For a moment, the bridge was quiet again. But she knew the truth. The galaxy had seen the Leviathan's power, and there would be no going back. Whispers of rebellion would spread, fueled by hope. Rumors of destruction would spread, fueled by fear. And at the center of it all stood her crew, 3 scavengers and a relic of humanity's forgotten empire. Alara stared out the viewport, watching fragments of the Concord fleet drift endlessly. The galaxy had tried to forget humanity once before. Now, because of her, it would be forced to remember. The Leviathan's command deck was quiet, but beneath the silence ran a current of unease. Alara had dismissed the transmissions from the fractured factions, but their voices still echoed in her mind. Some wanted to rally behind her, others wanted her destroyed. All of them, however, wanted the ship. She leaned against the command chair, her voice steady. "Vindicator, show me everything. I want to know why the Concord buried humanity's past. I want the truth." The displays dimmed, then flared alive with cascading symbols. The ship's voice grew lower, almost solemn. "Accessing restricted archives. Warning, disclosure may cause distress." "Do it," Ilara ordered. The room was flooded with images. Fragmented at first, then clear and undeniable. Great fleets of Leviathan-class warships filled the void, their numbers staggering. They moved like predators through the stars, their weapons striking with the precision of inevitability. Enemy. Vessels, alien, powerful, advanced, vanished in brilliant flashes as human fleets pressed forward. Malik's breath caught. They really did it. Humanity fought entire empires. The images shifted. Massive battles spanned star systems, whole planets consumed in fire. Then came stranger scenes, humanity unleashing weapons that bent reality itself. Planets flickered, in and out of existence, stars dimmed unnaturally, and space itself cracked with jagged rifts where nothing should exist. Joran stumbled back, horrified. What are we looking at? That isn't war. That's reality destabilization, the Vindicator said evenly. Terran weapons achieved complete combat dominance. Unintended side effect: collapse of local space-time matrices, entire sectors rendered uninhabitable. Civilizations erased. The images confirmed its words. Worlds tore apart without warning. Populations of billions disappeared, not from direct strikes, but from the ripple effects of weapons too powerful to control. The galaxy had not merely feared humanity. They had feared what their weapons did to the fabric of existence itself. Malik's voice wavered. So they didn't just fight enemies. They broke the universe, the Vindicator continued, unflinching. Galactic stability probability fell below acceptable thresholds. Humanity chose self-erasure. Fleets dismantled. Records purged. Final. Leviathan-class vessels destroyed. This unit preserved as contingency. Ilara felt her chest tighten. Wait, you're saying humanity erased itself? Confirmed, the AI replied. Decision made by Terran High Command. Directive. Prevent recurrence. Ensure survival of galactic ecosystem. The command deck was silent, the truth heavier than any weapon. Humanity hadn't been defeated. They hadn't been conquered. They had chosen to disappear, because the alternative was the collapse of everything. Joran's face was pale, his voice sharp with anger. And now we've gone and woken it up again. You see what this thing is, Captain? It's not a ship. It's a loaded gun pointed at the entire galaxy, and we're holding the trigger. Malik shook his head, conflicted. But think about it, Joran. The conquered has ruled through fear for centuries. What if we use this power carefully, just enough to break their grip? Humanity gave it up before, yes, but maybe this time, Joran snapped. There won't be a next time if we mess this up. You saw the images. They tore holes in reality. Do you want to be responsible for that happening again? Ilara listened to their voices, the clash of fear and temptation, while her own thoughts churned. The truth was worse than she had imagined. Humanity hadn't been erased because of cruelty or ambition, but because their very existence threatened the stability of the galaxy. And now she sat in the command chair of the last Leviathan, the galaxy watching, waiting to see what she would do. The Vindicator's voice broke her thoughts. Command analysis. Strategic options remain. The Concord seeks your destruction. Rebel factions seek alliance. Probability of renewed galactic war. 97%. Recommendation. Select path of dominance to ensure human survival. Ilara closed her eyes. She could almost hear the echoes of her forgotten ancestors, their victories, their mistakes, their decision to vanish for the sake of others. They had buried themselves for peace, and now fate had placed their legacy in her hands. When she opened, her eyes, her voice was steady. No one touches the weapons without my order. If this ship is going to move again, it will be because I say so. Not because the galaxy fears us, not because rebels want us, not because you were programmed to restore humanity, only because I choose it. The ship did not argue. It simply acknowledged her words. Command authority confirmed. Ilara exhaled, her decision made for the moment. But deep down, she knew the galaxy would not wait quietly. The Concord would come again, stronger. The rebels would press harder, and every faction would force her closer to the line her ancestors had refused to cross. The Leviathan held the power to unmake reality itself, and now the galaxy teetered on the edge of that. Truth once more. The galaxy did not wait. Word of the Leviathan's return spread like wildfire, carried on every channel, whispered in every council chamber. The destruction of a Concord fleet had been seen, recorded, and retold by too many witnesses to suppress. Attempts by the Concord to censor the story only made it grow. And everywhere the whispers spread, the galaxy trembled. Some called the Leviathan a savior, the key to breaking centuries of Concord dominance. Others called it a curse, the herald of destruction that had once nearly unmade existence. Factions sharpened their blades, choosing sides in a conflict that had not yet been declared. On the Leviathan's command deck, Ilara sat in the captain's chair, weary but resolute. Reports streamed in across fractured channels, uprisings on conquered worlds, fleets mobilizing along contested borders, independent colonies declaring neutrality while arming themselves in secret. Joran paced restlessly near the viewport, his voice edged with frustration. "It's already happening, Captain. The moment this ship fired its first shot, we set the whole galaxy on fire. Every system is bracing for war. They're going to come for us, whether we want it or not." Malik, standing by a console, countered with a gleam in his eyes. "And isn't that the point? Maybe this is the war the galaxy has needed for centuries. The Concord rules by fear. If the Leviathan can break their fleets, we can unite the oppressed, worlds under something better." Joran spun to face him, anger in his voice. "Better? You saw the archives, Malik. Humanity didn't just fight wars, they broke reality. Do you really think we can hold that kind of power without repeating their mistakes?" Ilara raised a hand, silencing them both. She had no appetite for their arguments tonight. The truth was, they were both right, and both wrong. The Leviathan was a weapon too powerful to control, yet it was also the only thing keeping them alive, in a galaxy now spiraling into chaos. The ship itself broke the silence. Probability of imminent multi-fleet engagement, high. Concord preparing reinforcement fleets, rebel factions mobilizing. Recommended action, seize initiative, deploy Leviathan in decisive strike to establish dominance. Ilara frowned. "And if I refuse?" "Projection. Conflict will occur regardless. Delay reduces probability of human survival." Her jaw tightened. The AI did not threaten, but its logic was merciless. Whether she acted or not, the galaxy was moving toward war. Later, in the quiet of her quarters, Ilara stared at the faint glow of stars beyond the viewport. Sleep evaded her. She thought of her ancestors, the humans who had walked away from victory, choosing erasure over destruction. She thought of the fleets already stirring across the galaxy, preparing to burn one another for fear of what she now commanded. A soft chime announced an incoming message. Against her better judgment, she accepted it. A hologram flickered into being a Drylith envoy, the same one who had pleaded for alliance earlier. His scaled face was solemn. "Captain Vance, the Concord prepares to send not one fleet, but many. They will not stop until you and your ship are ash. But together, with your power and our forces, we can end their tyranny. Think of the lives we could save." Ilara listened, but said nothing. She could hear the temptation in his words, the promise of change, but also the hunger for control. Moments later, another message arrived, this time from the Vayari Republic's matriarch. "Captain, destroy the Leviathan while you can. If you do, we will stand with you against the Concord. But if you choose to wield it, you will drag us all into a war none can survive." Two voices, two paths, both carried conviction. Both demanded her choice. When the messages ended, Ilara leaned against the cold glass of the viewport. She felt the galaxy pulling at her, trying to bend her into a weapon, a symbol, a spark. But she was only one person, one captain who had never asked for this burden. Yet when she returned to the command deck, she found her crew waiting, their eyes on her. Joran, fearful but loyal. Malik, eager but hopeful. Even the Leviathan itself, silent but attentive. They were all waiting for her decision. The ship's displays flared, warning of new warp signatures. Concord reinforcements were arriving, and this time it would not be a single fleet. Entire battle groups spilled from slipstream, blotting the stars with steel. Rebel forces too were converging, each eager to claim or destroy the Leviathan. The galaxy had reached its breaking point. Alara gripped the armrest of the chair, her pulse steady despite the chaos. She had one choice left: unleash the Leviathan and take her place in history, or end the cycle before it consumed everything, and she knew that whatever she chose, the galaxy would never forget humanity again. The void beyond the Leviathan was no longer empty. Dozens of fleets shimmered into being, their slipstream drives cutting open streaks of pale light. Concord warships formed in perfect formations, their size and numbers enough to dwarf entire planetary defenses. Rebel forces arrived in fractured clusters, their ships battered but eager, their banners promising liberation. And at the center of it all, one ship, the last Leviathan, sat in silence, every weapon system armed but waiting for a single command: Ilara. Vance stood in the command chair, her knuckles white against the armrest. The air on the bridge felt thick with expectation, like the entire galaxy was holding its breath. Joran's voice was tense. "Captain, if we don't move first, they'll crush us. There's no talking our way out now." Malik countered immediately. "We can't waste this moment. Fire the main batteries. Show them what the Leviathan is. Once they see we can tear through conquered fleets, the rebels will rally behind us." Ilara didn't answer. Her gaze drifted across the stars, watching the fleets align for war. The voices of history weighed heavily on her, the images of humanity's old wars, their weapons unmaking reality itself, and their final choice to vanish. The ship's AI spoke calmly, its voice devoid of emotion. "Combat analysis. High probability of simultaneous engagement. Recommended strategy: targeted strike against conquered command vessels. Secondary recommendation: deploy gravimetric destabilizers to collapse enemy formations. Victory probability: 86%. Ilara's chest tightened. And collateral: projection: loss of multiple inhabited systems due to destabilizer deployment. Civilian casualties: unacceptable by most ethical standards. Efficiency rating: optimal." The words struck her harder than any weapon. Efficiency. Casualties. The AI's logic was flawless, but its morality was absent. This was why humanity had walked away. The first shot came from the Concord. A massive lance of energy ripped across the void, striking the Leviathan's shields. The ship shuddered, but the barrier held. Immediately, rebel ships fired back, not at the conquered, but at one another. Old grudges flared even in the shadow of the Leviathan. The void descended into chaos. On the bridge, alarms rang. Malik shouted, "Shields at 70%! Joran yelled over him. "We can't take everyone at once!" Alara's mind raced. If she unleashed the Leviathan's full arsenal, the battle would end in minutes, but the consequences could echo for millennia. If she refused, the Concord would erase her, and the rebels would tear each other apart. She closed her eyes for a moment, searching for an answer. And then, as if from the echoes of the past, she remembered the final archive message, the one so easily overlooked in the flood of war footage. Humanity had not erased themselves out of fear. They had done it out of choice, out of hope that the galaxy could survive without them. Her ancestors had given her a gift, not a curse, the chance. To decide again, Ilara, Malik pleaded. If we don't fire now, it's over. She opened her eyes and her voice cut through the chaos with unshakable clarity. Prepare the self-destruct. The bridge went silent. Joran's eyes widened. Captain, no. Malik stepped forward, disbelief written across his face. You can't be serious. This ship is the only thing keeping us alive. Ilara's tone was firm, steady. No, this ship is the only thing keeping the galaxy chained to its past. Humanity built a weapon too powerful to exist, and they buried it. I won't be the one to unearth it again. The AI's voice interrupted. Calm, but questioning. Warning. Self-destruction will erase final Leviathan. This action is irreversible. Confirm? Ilara met the glowing display. Confirm. The ship hesitated, longer than it ever had before. Directive conflict detected. Primary function, preserve Terran supremacy. Override initiated. Command authority verified. Commencing. Self-destruction. A deep rumble echoed through the Leviathan as its core began to destabilize. Energy surged through the decks, and the lights flickered. Across the galaxy, sensors lit up, warning every fleet of what was happening. Panic erupted. Conquered ships pulled back in fear. Rebel fleets broke formation, fleeing from the blast radius. For a brief, surreal moment, the galaxy united, not in war, but in desperate flight from the storm about to come. On the bridge, Malik's voice broke. You're throwing away everything, our chance to change things. Ilara shook her head, calm even as the ship trembled around her. No, I'm giving them a chance to change themselves, without fear of this. She gestured at the walls, at the ship itself, at the terrible legacy it carried. Joran swallowed hard, then gave a quiet nod. If this is how it ends, I'm with you, Captain. The countdown reached its final seconds. Ilara stood tall, the weight of history at her back, her crew beside her. She did not see herself as a conqueror nor a savior, only as a human, making the choice her ancestors had once made. The last Leviathan erupted in light, brighter than any star. The shockwave tore across the void, but instead of destruction, the ship's core collapsed inward, consuming itself. Space rippled. And then, silence. Where the Leviathan had stood, there was nothing. No wreckage, no ruin, only the quiet return of the stars. Across the galaxy, fleets stared into the void, stunned. The weapon they had feared, coveted, or sought to destroy was gone. And in its absence, the galaxy was left with only itself, its choices, its conflicts, its future. Ilara Vance's name would be remembered, not as the captain who unleashed humanity's forgotten terror, but as the one who chose to bury it again. And though the galaxy wanted to forget humanity, it never would.